Hi, everybody. Welcome back for more of my thoughts from Town. I wanted to try to say what I could about my grandparents, although I don't really have a lot of info. My wife has more from a genealogy standpoint than I do. Um, all I can say is, uh, on my father's side, um, his father loved professional wrestling and would sit in front of the TV and watch it constantly, thinking it was dead real. Oh, he was dead serious about it. And my dad's mom, Ms. Ola, was just a standard Southern house mom, great cook. Made all sorts of great foods of all kinds. My cousin Stuart has many of her recipes. And still tries to follow them and cook them to this very day. I spent more time with Ola than I did with my dad's father. He died much younger for me. But even Miss Ola, I don't have that much interaction with because she was always in the kitchen, you know. So I was always out just doing stuff. So I just don't have that much of a recollection with her. On my mother's side, my grandfather, James Grover, I know that he was a salesman pretty much after he had been orphaned and taken in by the family of one of his uncles on his mother's side, I believe. You know, he became, a salesman, sold whatever he could sell, and was pretty darn good at it. But then, believe it or not, got hit by a car. This was in Georgia. He got hit by a car and messed himself up pretty good, but he didn't die. He was still functional. He could do stuff. And somehow he met Lilla, my grandmother, wee little thing. I mean, teeny little woman. She was a school teacher, believe it or not. And her and her bevy of sisters lived in this great big house up on a hill in Macon, Georgia. And, you know, I still have, I think, somewhere a drawing or a photograph of the house. Um, and I remember her family telling me that when he would come courting her, they would all sit out on the front porch and hassle him, grill him with all sorts of questions, tell him he couldn't go, she wasn't there, go away, come back another day, all this sort of stuff. And somehow he persisted and just kept at it and kept at it and kept at it. And I'm also told, I recall, that they were the first house to actually get electricity and to set up an actual plumbing system in the house up there. So I can't, I don't have a lot of verification of all of this other than from the family, but obviously if that was true, then the monks from up there were well heeled at the time. They were influential, well placed family at the time if they could do that. So eventually Lilla agreed to marry Mr. Mack, and they were told for his health reasons that they would probably be better off down here in the humid South. So they came down to Sebring, and he began selling china that was being made here north of Sebring somewhere. I can't remember exactly what it was. And if my memory serves, somehow he ended up getting like a piece of the action and this and that over time, and basically worked everything into a point where he was able to start a five and dime, a five and dime kind of store on the town center in Sebring, and that became their mainstay and what they were known for in the history of the town. And as time went on, they had two of them, particularly Lilla, my grandmother. She became a bit of a, I don't know what you'd call her, a backhaul banker. She was making loans to people with interest. I got things out of her ledger book, right? Payment schedules, the whole deal. If you were late, she would jump on you. She, for, being a teeny little thing she was, from what I can gather, you borrowed money from her, you better not be late on your payment, or she come looking for you, you know. So it's kind of interesting. I never would have figured her for that, but well, sure she did. And, when you read through the stuff, it's obvious that, both sets of grandparents were, bigots to a degree. It varied, from one to the other, but there was obviously, the white Christian bias, against people of color, against, Jews, certainly Muslims, but you never hardly hear of them because they just weren't around at the time in those zones. So, I never really got to know any of them well, which is kind of unfortunate. When my grandfather died on my mother's side, um, it was my grandmother and her sister Kate who lived in that house. Kate would be a spinster the rest of her life, dedicated her life to her church. That's what she did. And not long after Lila's death, Kate passed away. That was pretty much expected. We kind of think that that was what was going to happen. That when Lila passed away, Kate would not be far behind. And that's turned out to be the case. So my wife can tell you more. I mean, she can go back in time with the grandparents more. I can't really tell you much about my father's side. I can say that on my mother's side, we go back quite a ways into England and have some pretty prominent connections in our family tree back there. So, stuff that my mother would have found incredibly exciting had she known. Unfortunately, she never did. But, not that the nickel's going to get us a cup of coffee, but it's always worth thinking about. So that's it for my grandparents at the moment. Sorry I can't give you more info. If I've had some, I'll pass it on. Peace, and everybody hang ten.